And we are on YouTube.
Terrific. And have most all our council members had a chance to get signed on? You think we got everybody?
Well, we sort of had an ambush of people signing on all at once. I think we may be waiting for just a few more, but
Okay.
I can go ahead and call the roll to see who all is on if you'd like.
Let's give it one more minute and we'll get started, okay? 1, 2, 3. I see 9 myself, so just give it one more minute. In the meantime, I'll wish everyone a blessed Thanksgiving for this week. I know it's been a challenging year, but at the same time, I believe here in Charleston, we got a lot to be thankful for and a lot of blessings to count. And so I just want to give my personal good wishes and thanks to everyone during this time of Thanksgiving. So Madam Clerk, I think we're good. If you want to start by calling the roll, and we'll call this meeting of City Council November 24th, 2020 to order.
Councilwoman Del Chapo.
Here.
Councilmember Shealy.
Here.
Councilmember Saccharin. Councilmember Mitchell. Councilmember Brady.
Present.
Yeah, Mitchell is here.
Councilmember Gregory.
Here.
Councilmember Waring. Councilmember Seekings.
Here.
Councilmember Shade.
Present.
Councilmember Griffin.
Here.
Councilmember Appel. Councilwoman Jackson.
Here.
Mayor Tecklenburg.
Present. Thank you very much. So we've got, what, 2 council members outstanding, but I bet they'll be joining us shortly. But we will proceed with the meeting. And if you would like to join us, I'm going to ask Councilmember Griffin if he'll please lead us in a prayer.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, for all the many blessings you bestowed upon us. And even in the toughest year probably we've ever faced, Lord, we know that if we give our arms to you, Lord, we put our faith in you, that you will lead us in the right direction. We ask that tonight you just help us and you guide us and you help us remember that our number one goal is to look out for the people that don't necessarily have a voice. And even in our toughest times, Lord, please allow us to be the voice of the people. And we ask that we do all of these things in your name as always. In the Lord's name we pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Now, if you can see in the distance, there's a wonderful American flag here in my office. If you join me, please stand. We'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands,
one nation
under God,
indivisible,
with
liberty and justice
for all.
So thank you, council members. If you will please indulge me, we had no recognitions on the agenda, but I would respectfully like to add one. As I saw in the newspaper, really in a way a sad thing, just the other day, that 2 of our most wonderful citizens, Jack Bass and Natalie Dupree, will be leaving Charleston to live closer to Jack's children up in North Carolina. So they have been such wonderful citizens. I respectfully would like to just add a proclamation to our agenda, recognizing them and the contributions they have made in their lives here to the city of Charleston. Whereas Jack Bass and Natalie Dupree have each left unique and lasting contributions to the culture of our city, region, state, and nation. And through his pioneering journalism and nonfiction books, Jack Bass has written extensively about the American South, focusing on Southern politics, race relations, and the role of law in shaping the civil rights era. And whereas a contributor to the Post and Courier and the state newspaper, Jack Bass has also written for the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, Atlanta Constitution, Washington Post, and many others. Whereas in a review of Jack Bass's The Orangeburg Massacre, Roy Reed wrote in the New York Times book review, quote, "It is too often true that the only redress of a great wrong is good reporting of it. This book, The Orangeburg Massacre, is excellent reporting and it apparently will stand as the only writing of what went wrong in Orangeburg. And whereas Jack Bass has passed on his knowledge to future generations as Professor Emeritus of Humanities and Social Sciences at the College of Charleston and formerly a Professor of Journalism at the University of Mississippi, and many other accolades to our friend Jack Bass. Now, the other half of this power couple, whereas he is married to food writer Natalie Dupree, best-selling author with 13 hardback and 2 softback cookbooks and more than 300 television shows for the Food Network, PBS, and the Learning Channel. And whereas Natalie Dupree has been prominently featured in the New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, Chicago Tribune, as other magazines, Better Homes and Garden, on, Good Housekeeping, whereas Natalie Dupree has appeared on the Today Show, Good Morning America, The Morning Show, CNN, among others. Dupree's best-selling book, New Southern Cooking, started an entire culinary movement. She's won the James Beard Award for Southern Memories and Comfortable Entertaining, as well as her most recent book, Natalie Dupree's Mastering the Art of Southern Cooking. Whereas the founding chairperson of the Charleston Food and Wine Festival, Natalie Dupree also was a founder of Southern Foodways, the Atlanta and Charleston chapters of Les Dames d'Escoffier, the American Institute of Wine and Food and International Association of Culinary Professionals, of which she was a 2-time president. For all of these reasons, and whereas Natalie writes for the Post and Courier as well, whereas finally Bass and Dupree plan to relocate to Raleigh, North Carolina, the city of Charleston wishes to honor their contributions to the community and wish them well in your next chapter in life. Now, therefore, I, John J. Tecklenburg, Mayor of the City of Charleston, do hereby proclaim today, Tuesday, November 24th, it's Jack Bass and Natalie Dupree Day in the City of Charleston. Congratulations, y'all. Natalie, if you'd like to unmute and share a few words with us, or Jack, we'd welcome them.
Oh gosh, we're going to miss Charleston so much. Thank you very much, but it just makes it a bitter pill to leave Charleston. We won't have these vistas right out our door anymore or down the street.
God bless. And Jack, I must share with y'all, I first met Jack Bass at my home in Orangeburg in 1968 when he came to write his book, and he visited my parents there. So I've known Mr. Bass most of all my life and have the greatest respect for him, his writings, and the work he did to share that story with the world. God bless you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Best wishes to you in your new home. Continue writing, and I'm sure they'll publish it in the Post and Courier. We'll stay in touch with you.
Thank you. And thank you all.
You're welcome.
Bye. You want us to go?
Thank you so much. Okay, so next, you can stick around if you like, by the way. Next is our public hearings. And I'm sure folks have signed up to speak on some of these individually. Christopher Morgan, I presume you're out there in this Zoom meeting and be able to make presentations. We'll start with number one, a resolution to abandon a portion of St. Phillips Street.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, members of council, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fantastic. This first one is actually coming through public service because it's an abandonment of a street. It is St. Phillips Street, and it's a portion that relates to the recent PUD that you all approved on Shepherd Street. It's only a small portion of the street that dead ends into the Septima Clark Parkway. But it is not going to be needed for the same transportation purposes it has been in the past and will become part of the PUD as is later on your agenda.
All right. Did you have a drawing to share with us, Christopher, or not on this one?
Have one. I think there is the resolution on that. I don't know if the public service folks provided one on that.
Well, I know it.
I think it's been on our agenda a number of times.
Yes, it was.
Jennifer, did anyone from the public sign up to speak on this matter?
No, sir. No one has signed up to speak on this item.
Move for approval.
Second.
I'll second.
Approve in a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Number 2.
And this is just a small portion of a street on Daniel Island that has had a change in configuration. Far Street, I believe it is, on Daniel Island.
So it's also a resolution to abandon a portion of the street. It has been to council before. Jennifer, did anybody sign up to speak on this?
No, sir.
Move for approval.
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Mr. Mayor, can we take for public hearing purposes numbers 3, 4, and 5 together? They all pertain to the same general zoning issue.
It suits me if there's not an objection from council.
No objection.
Second.
Okay. So Christopher, if you would proceed to present 3, 4, and 5.
Yes, sir.
And
Thank
then
you.
we'll take comments from anyone who signed up to speak on any of those 3.
Okay. All right. You all can see my screen now, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what you see on the screen is the address is 121 Cannon Street, 217 Ashley Avenue, and 125 Cannon Street. I hope you can see my cursor. This is Cannon Street here, running east-west, Ashley Avenue here, running north-south, and 217 Ashley is this location here at the corner of Cannon and Ashley. And then 121 Cannon is one house away here in this location. And then 125 Cannon is at the corner of Cannon and Islington Court. These are all requesting a rezoning from diverse residential DR2F to limited business. The Planning Commission has recommended a disapproval of all of these rezonings. I'm going to go through some other slides now. This is in our comprehensive plan, of course. It's in the urban designation, as is most of the Cannonboro-Elliott Borough neighborhood. This is an aerial image of the properties. These are the property at the corner of Cannon and Ashley. 217 Ashley is a residential structure, historic residential building. The other parcel at 121 Cannon is also a residential structure. And then the structure at 125 is more commercial in nature. Going to the next image, here you see these parcels in the midst of the neighborhood. Again, to their south is residential zoning in orange, and in between the parcels is residential zoning in orange, but then to the north and to the west is limited business shown in the red color, and also to the east. This is Cannonboro-Elliott Borough, the short-term rental overlay. The reason we show this is it shows the commercially zoned properties at present in Cannonboro-Elliott Borough. So it indicates the properties that are eligible for short-term rental within the Cannonboro-Elliott Borough short-term rental overlay. By virtue of going to a commercial designation, these properties would be eligible for short-term rentals. Here is 121 Cannon Street, again, very traditional residential structure. Here's 217 Ashley, very historic, unique house there at the corner of Ashley and Cannon. And here we have the commercial storefront at the corner at 125 Cannon Street. And this property does have a use variance to allow for the type of salon that is inside it. So it's functioning legally with commercial use based on that use variance in place. And here's just a view down Cannon Street of the properties. So these were recommended for disapproval by Planning Commission. Staff also was recommending disapproval because of concern with the proliferation of the short-term rentals when you convert properties that are existing residential uses into commercial zoning, that the short-term rental aspect has been very prevalent in that neighborhood and a big concern of the neighborhood association. So our staff recommended disapproval, as did Planning Commission unanimously.
All right, thank you. Jennifer, is anyone signed up to be heard on any of these items?
Yes, we have 5 people signed up, and I believe we may have an additional speaker. Would you like to set a time limit, Mr. Mayor?
Let's say 2 minutes each, please.
All right, the first speaker I have is Bob Lowe. And Mr. Lowe, if you are joining us, I think you are on via Zoom.
Ma'am.
Yes, sir. Please proceed.
I would like to have the attorney for 3, 4, and 5 speak first, if we might. He's on, I think, Dwayne Green.
Well, Mr. Green, that'll be fine. Please.
And if permissible, we'd like him to use as much of the allotted time as we can. I think he's got a procedural issue question first that he'd like to ask the council or the chair. And if we could move forward in that way, Mr. Mayor, we'd be grateful.
Well, we'll ask Mr. Green to keep his initial remarks to 2 minutes, and then we'll see if we have any questions beyond there.
All right.
Thank you. Mr. Green?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Just fine, thank you.
Yes, I just want to say how grateful I am to be here in front of council and to be here. I know I have only 2 minutes, so I'll be very brief. I would like to start with a request. It's always been our goal to try to work out this application in a way that we can work with the neighborhood association, and council has been very good. I've had a chance to speak to a couple of members about how we could get more support for this application. And at this time, we'd like to request to amend our ordinance requests to CT rather than LB. We understand that that will not be heard today if that amended request is granted, and that's to allow time for proper advertising to let the neighborhood association knowing that we're seeking a different zoning designation, and we believe that we can garner more support by doing so. So I first wanted to ask if it would be permissible for us to amend our ordinance request from to CT from LB, excuse me, so that can be, won't be heard today, but it'll be heard, at the next available time.
Right. Mr. Morgan, can you opine on that for us, please?
Mr. Mayor, and I'd like our legal folks to help me on this if they can, but I believe that as long as you're requesting something that's less intense than what your original request was, that council can proceed with action on it. Of course, the CT zoning creates the exact same issues that the LB does. It would allow the short-term rental. And, from a staff standpoint, our recommendation would not change. And I think you've got some members from the neighborhood association who will speak to that issue tonight as well, because I think the neighborhood still has concern with the commercial, any type of commercial designation on it, because it allows the short-term rentals. But if the legal staff could weigh in and let us know, if this is a change that could be made by council based on the applicant's request here. I thought it could, but maybe I'm incorrect on that.
Right. Susan, do you want to weigh in on that question, please?
Okay, Mayor, I have to apologize. I was on the phone taking another call. Can you repeat the question, Christopher?
I can repeat it if it's okay, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sure.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Dean, Dwayne Green, on behalf of the applicants at 117, 121, and 125 Cannon Street. 117 is also the corner home that's also 217 Ashley. I've spoken to the applicants, and we wish to request that we could amend our ordinance requests to CT rather than LB, and that I would like to speak today if possible, but if not, we would like to postpone the hearing of it until it can be noticed and advertised. We realize it does have to be noticed and advertised properly, and we believe that if we have that extra time proceeding under that we would be able to garner better support than we have, at this present time. So we're requesting to amend our ordinance request to CT rather than LB and have that heard at a future date.
So, Christopher, was the amendment request before any other body? Is this the first time we're hearing of it?
Well, it's been at Planning Commission, and Planning Commission recommended disapproval to limited business. The commercial transitional district is a less intense commercial district. So as I understood it, council could act on it if they so choose. Of course, if the applicant is asking to defer it, then the applicant can ask to defer it. Right. But I thought that council could act on it if they so chose, because it's been advertised for the more intense limited business use. And that's the key in the advertising and the noticing, is making sure the most intense that is requested has been advertised.
And Chris, just to add on to that, I have had a chance, and I'm very thankful to the members of council who've been able to speak with me. What we're trying to do is work collaboratively to garner more support. We realize right now the Planning Commission had recommended disapproval, and we realize the support would likely not be as strong for it based on that. But it's my understanding that this amendment and working together.
Right.
I would recommend that we defer it.
It's certainly up the pleasure of council. If it's
Mr. Mayor, I move for deferral.
Second.
We have a motion to defer. Now, before we take action, council members, I would like to hear from the other citizens, though, who have signed up to speak on these matters. So they've come online and they want to be heard. So let's hear from them before we take a vote, if that's okay. Jennifer, who else did we have in line to speak on 3, 4, or 5?
Next, we have Marion Hawkins.
All right, Mr. Hawkins.
Mayor Tecklenburg and members of council, I would request that this not be deferred and this would come before a vote, because the objective either way is a commercial property, whether it's CT or LB. I think the objective of the applicants is to commercialize and commercially activate these properties. And we heard one of the original applicants that represented all 3 came to our neighborhood association. It was defeated 40-1. Our neighborhood has consistently advocated for preserving the balance we have, the very delicate balance we have of commercial and residential properties. We just want to keep the diversity of property use throughout the neighborhood. And we also want to preserve the needed housing, whether it's for renters, long-term residents, future residents, and also just to help with affordable housing. So we strongly would encourage you to go ahead and vote on this, because the objective is the same. We, Planning Commission, in a very rare show of majority support against this proposal. The applicant at 217 Ashley has previously sought upzoning to a commercial property, and it was defeated at BZA, Planning Commission, and Council before. So, our neighborhood is, we welcome. We're very progressive. We're not anti-growth or NIMBYs. We just want to preserve and not have the whole neighborhood turn into one huge short term. We are always open to use variances on a case-by-case basis. So I would encourage council to go ahead and bring this to a vote. Our neighborhood has rallied and been to a neighborhood meeting, Planning Commission, and now to the City Council. We have a deluge of continually requests of properties seeking commercial zoning so that they can be STRs. So I would ask the council to please take this up tonight and kindly defeat the applicant's request.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins.
Next is Will Green.
Mr. Green?
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Please proceed.
Thank you for listening to us tonight. I would just state exactly what Mr. Hawkins was saying is my belief. We're a welcoming neighborhood. We welcome STRs, but we have a lot of inventory out there that needs to be looked at. We don't need to add to it as to we feel would create an imbalance that we worked so hard to create in the neighborhood between commercial and residential. I would say that I'm in that spirit of being a welcoming community, that we would hopefully can get with council or the BZA planning and everyone to find a zoning that would be appropriate if they want to have a use variance or a zoning that would benefit them in the best way without the STR component. So, I mean, we're more than welcome to work and discuss those types of things. But as this is currently being brought to us here at the last minute at CT, it's just the same thing. It's the same end game. So we would like to work with these people to, and with all of us to join together and hopefully come up with a resolution. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Next we have, and they actually signed up together, Nancy Summer and Blaine Summer, and I believe one of them will be speaking. And if they're joining by phone, if you could press *6 to unmute yourself. Mr. or Mrs.
Hello,
Summer.
this is Nancy
Ms.
Summer.
Summer.
Can you hear me clearly?
We can hear you great. Please proceed.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to present our case in front of the council. My name is Nancy Summer, and I'm here with my husband, Blaine. We are homeowners at 213B Ashley Avenue, which directly borders one of the properties that is seeking and has previously sought the zoning change, 217 Ashley. In fact, the entire rear length of our house abuts the property at 217 Ashley. I also am going to speak as a representative for the Ashley Avenue horizontal regime, which is a series of 4 homes that are to the rear of all of the properties that are requesting the zoning changes. I can only speak personally as to our concerns for the requested rezoning of 217 Ashley, as the intended purposes have varied throughout the multiple requests, and we have been very concerned about increased noise, possible safety and security risks, and definitely the utilization of parking in the neighborhood and on the streets. We purchased our home at a considerable investment with the knowledge that though the neighborhood was a mix of business and residential properties, we valued that we had a residential balance surrounding our home. We have attended multiple hearings over the past several years, which has been really an exhaustive effort to try to prevent the precedent of residents being able to convert their homes to business zoning for their individual interests. We believe that allowing a disproportionate number of properties to change the zoning would be a detriment to the character of the neighborhood and would possibly jeopardize not only our peaceful enjoyment of our personal residence, but possibly decrease the value of our home, which could then extrapolate to more requests for rezoning, and then the eventual destruction of the residential feel of the community entirely. I do thank you again for the opportunity to speak to you today. I hope to keep these comments brief. I hope that this is the final time that we have to appear before a commission or the council. Please vote to protect our neighborhood and our private residences and support the Planning Commission in their recommendation by denying any request for any type of commercial rezoning. Thank you very much, and happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Summer.
And our last speaker is Robert Holt. And Mr. Holt, if you are on, oh, I think you are on by Zoom.
Yep. Mr. Mayor, Councilman, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. My name is Bob Holt, and I live at 6 Tully Alley in the Elliott-Burr-Cannon Borough neighborhood. I've lived here since 1985, so I've seen a lot of changes in the neighborhood. I was the chairman of the Design and Development Committee when the STR overlay ordinance went through the city when Mayor Riley, and we worked with Mayor Riley. We worked with the city very closely. We worked with all the neighbors 2 years. We worked with the Preservation Society. We worked with the Historic Charleston Foundation. Our neighborhood is not NIMBY. We have a balance in our neighborhood of commercial and residential activity. And the 2 years was to craft an ordinance that would respect that balance and would maintain a neighborhood in Elliott-Burr-Cannon-Burr. We do have a lot of landlord-owned properties where we have tenants, and those would be the first to go in this cascade that would happen if you guys permit this upzoning. The property at 125 Cannon was purchased a year ago and is being renovated as a home. The only use for that in a commercial setting is an STR. The owners of 217 Ashley Avenue have been before you multiple times attempting an upzoning, and this is the latest attempt where they have retained Mr. Green to represent themselves and several others to attempt to have a more compelling case to you. It does not make a more compelling case. It highlights the danger of permitting people to buy properties that are zoned residential and upzone them for their own pecuniary benefit and to the detriment, the great detriment of the neighborhood. If you permit this, we will not have a neighborhood. Almost, there are several hundred properties that abut commercial properties in our neighborhood, and you will be deluged, as we are in our neighborhood, with people seeking to do this. There are over 40 properties on Cannon and Spring that would come before you that are currently zoned residential. I thank you. And I request that you deny this.
Great. Thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you. I have to say that in the last 10 minutes, I have realized why we have public hearing and then we entertain action for council. So I would like to withdraw my motion to defer. I do feel like this deserves a vote this evening. If Ms. Herdina says that we can take up the applicant's request to make it a CT rezoning as opposed to an LB that we would vote on tonight, I would prefer to have that vote and not defer it. I might be so bold as to ask to withdraw my motion.
That's fine, Councilmember. But let me go back to Jennifer. Did you have anyone else that wanted to be heard?
We did have some comments that we received related to items E3 through 5. 4 people supported the Planning Commission's recommendation to disapprove 121 Cannon. 5 people supported the Planning Commission's recommendation regarding 217 Ashley Avenue, and 4 people supported the Planning Commission's recommendation regarding 125 Cannon. And that was all.
All right, thank you. So the motion to defer has been withdrawn. Can I entertain a motion from council?
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question before someone makes a motion?
Sure.
We spent so many years talking about this, and I know we've changed the rule. Mr. Dino, what is the now rule for overturning a negative recommendation from the Planning Commission? Is it 8 votes?
Yeah.
It's just a regular vote.
Okay, great.
The regular vote. Yeah.
The Planning Commission recommended disapproval.
Disapproval, right.
So if we want to have a motion to agree with the Planning Commission, then we would be denying the upzoning. Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually want to put a motion on the floor to defer, and let me explain why. From listening to the residents, Mr. Green and I think Mr. Hinton and Mr. Holt, I was in a situation similar to this in 1986. If you look at the corner of Rutledge and Moultrie, there's a small 2-story office building diagonally across from the bank, a church, and Hampton Park. And you have residents down Moultrie Street, you have residents down Rutledge Avenue. And when I put in an application, I wasn't on council at the time. When I put in an application for the zoning change, the zoning administrator at the time said that if they allowed a commercial zoning to go there, it would destroy the residential makeup of that neighborhood. Well, the city had just come up with a zoning category that Mr. Green referred to, commercial transition. And it was designed, if you go through the categories, you know, you've got heavy industrial, you've got light industrial, you've got general business, you've got limited business. Then you have commercial transitional, which is supposed to be a softer approach as you get into a residential area. For example, commercial transitional, then it goes to multifamily, and then obviously single family. Our ordinance, and it's an unintended consequence, because when the city came up with commercial transitional, there was no discussion about short-term rental. And several of these concerned neighbors have reported STR, which I agree. I agree that limited business shouldn't go there. But in our commercial transitional, as well as our limited business zoning categories, both allow short-term rentals. I don't understand why, if we need to amend the commercial transitional ordinance to take away short-term rentals. Because if a person doesn't want to do short-term rentals, and you want to put a softer business in there, I don't know, a salon, a bakery, I don't know, all those type things fit in pretty well. As a matter of fact, Mr. Mayor, you probably remember when one block down, Bullwinkle Bakery used to be on Rutledge and Cannon Street. It's now condos, by the way. So commercial transitional would allow for, believe it or not, residential as well as low-level businesses. It actually, what's some of the differences between limited business and CT? Hours of operation. You can put a gas station in limited business. You can't put a gas station in commercial transitional. Most of the businesses allowed there are allowed to operate till about 8 o'clock at night. Now, it does allow for a restaurant. But if we were to amend, we meaning the city, were to amend CT to take away short-term rental, then I think you would have another avenue for businesses or property owners that don't want to be disruptive to neighborhoods. Put in businesses that can dovetail, frankly, with neighborhoods. And then again, I'm repeating, but not be a threat with short-term rentals and partying until the break of dawn. And I just think that unintended consequences of having that ability to do STR and LB as well as CT, it was never, the city never intended that. We evolved into that because, as I said, when the 658 Rutledge Avenue is what I'm talking about, the building that I built to put my office in. And actually there's an attorney that was upstairs above it. And today, 20 some odd years later, not one of those residences have changed to commercial that boarded the property. I will ask you to go from Rutledge Avenue to King Street on Moultrie Street. You won't find one other commercial building. And if you were to go north on Rutledge Avenue from Moultrie Street to go all the way to Cleveland Street, there's not one additional commercial building that was upzoned as a result of that commercial transitional coming right there on the corner of Rutledge and Moultrie Street. And this is about 22, 23 years. It was 1986 when we got the zoning change. So 24 years later. To me, it seems like commercial transitional, if you remove the ability to put STR, would be very well suited for this location. I passed through that location since I've been 11 years old. I go to St. Patrick's Catholic Church, and we come from West Ashley. And I remember when most of those houses that's zoned in the pink, Mr. Morgan, all the businesses that zone limited business around it, I think a great solution to this, so the neighbors won't be threatened about late night operations. Maybe possible businesses that come there would be utilized by a little bit more by the neighborhood, like the salon across the street is now. That used to be a residence. But right now, the neighborhood doesn't have that option, nor does the applicant having that option. Why? Because our ordinance isn't flexible enough. So my motion is to defer it, asking staff to go back and amend CT, taking away STR from that category. And hopefully if the applicant wants to come back with that amended version of CT, I think you find that a lot in this neighborhood would not be opposed to this, and maybe the property owner can move forward as well. So my motion is to defer and ask staff to amend CT, taking away STRs as an allowable use.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Shade, you want to be heard?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this is more of a question for our legal counsel, Mr. Dina. If the applicant may appear before the Planning Commission to rezone from diverse residential to limited business, which was denied, he's now seeking to have a different classification, which did not appear before the Planning Commission. If he withdrew the application tonight, or if it's deferred, as Councilmember Waring has moved, does it have to go back before the Planning Commission based on either the deferral, or if he makes a decision to withdraw the application at this time?
I believe he does. I think Chip is
Yeah.
willing to weigh in on this question, but it's my understanding it would have to go back before the Planning Commission at some point.
Yeah, I think he should have to go back through with an amended CT.
I just checked, so generally speaking, I agree with what Christopher said. If you went from more intense use to a less intense use, that would be fine. But that would require all the, basically in every use category, you could never get in more intense use in CT than in LB. And I don't know why, or I just scrolled through the ordinance. I don't know why we do it this way, but in CT, we can have, there's like 2 uses that are allowed at any hours in the CT zone that are on restricted hours in the LB zone. So it wouldn't be a straight, it wouldn't be a straight reduction in intensity. You could have 2 more intense uses in the CT than the LB. So I think that would have to be sent back to Planning Commission. And I don't think there's anything that prevents that, but that would be the process, is to refer it back to Planning Commission to have a public hearing on CT, or have a public hearing on CT for first reading at City Council first, whichever you want to do.
I'm just concerned about the applicant's change in making sure that we keep this process clean, so that just from a due process standpoint, everybody has an opportunity to be heard on this change, and whether or not the applicant is required to go back in front of the Planning Commission. So that, I hate to do this to the citizens who have talked out about this. They obviously are very much uniform in their opposition to the present application. But it makes sense to me, I think, that we reboot this and it goes back in front of the Planning Commission on a new application. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yes, sir. And there are restrictions. I think we have like a 6-month restriction for new applications under certain circumstances, but that wouldn't apply if it's a different ask than the original ask. If you request single family residential zoning the first time and then go to commercial the second time, you don't have to wait the 6 months. So that's kind of the other issue, is you wouldn't be, people would have to come out anyway if they just reapplied. So you may as well, you could require them to reapply, but it wouldn't stop the process or prevent people from having to come out and speak to CT.
Mr. Green is a wonderful lawyer, and I think so. I just want to make sure that we're covering all our bases on this. Thanks, Chip, for that explanation. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember Gregory, and then Mitchell.
Yeah, just a couple of questions to our legal team. If we were to make the change in CT by eliminating STR, all those existing CTs, would be grandfathered in, and there are a considerable amount of CT out there. So it would not affect those that are currently under that zoning. Am I correct?
It might. Those are temporary permits. Those are not, that's not a vested right in the sense of a permanent vested right. It's a temporary use permit for, wait, this is short-term. Well, I'd have to check on commercial short-term.
This is in Canterbury, Elliott.
Yeah, it may be a permanent use permission.
I think
yeah,
Tip, I think that's a very important point for us to
absolutely.
clarify, because if it's going to affect the existing CTs, I think that it could be problematic. Now, there are other alternatives as well. I mean, we could keep the existing CT in place and do another category of CT which excludes short-term rentals. So, in terms of sitting back and sort of discussing this at length and going through all the pros and cons, I don't think that it would be a useless exercise, because I think this will come up for us again at some point. Because right now I see very little distinction between the CT and the LB, particularly as it relates to STR. And the big issue in this community, okay, of which I represent, and I've been dealing with this issue now for 2 or 3 years, okay? And the neighborhood association is extremely adamant about not allowing these properties to become short-term rentals. And I just don't want the applicant to attempt to go to another category, and which would still provide the opportunity to do short-term rentals. So to me, we need to deal with the STR issue.
Yeah.
Councilmember, I just checked while you were talking, and it is a 1-year permit. So once it expires, there'd be no vested right. I mean, you can't build a new short-term rental unit in this area. You have to convert an existing unit. So if you take away if the 1-year permit expires and you don't allow short-term rentals in this zoning area, they don't get a continued vested right. It doesn't fall under that act. It's a temporary use permit, not a permanent use permit.
Well, that's a major consideration here, folks.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's a major consideration.
Councilmember Mitchell. You're on mute, Councilmember Mitchell.
Yeah, I was alluding to the same thing that the Councilmember Gregory was saying, which is the district he represents, but I also in the Cannon Bar before, and I think they fought a long time with the STR, a long time, and I was right there when they were fighting with the mayor that we were not going to have short-term rental STR all over the place. They were fine with the STR where it's located. They didn't want to spread it out. They wanted most of the homes, the houses there, and try to come with the residential part of it to keep a balance there in that particular community. So that's what we are looking for, and that's what they were looking for all the time, is keeping a balance. So not to have short-term rentals scattered all over the place. So this is the thing that we are looking at. A lot of people were purchasing properties just to do short-term rental, STR, and we were trying to hold that back. So we got to look at this very carefully. And so I agree 100% with Councilmember Gregory that we need to do something else, and not knocking the homeowner who owns the property. I'm not doing that, but I still have to look exactly what the community there wants, because they didn't stop STR, but they were satisfied with the area that they have it in. So it's a little different there. So I'm just kind of going along with Councilmember Gregory on this one here, because this is a district he represents.
So Councilmember Waring and Council, I'm listening to all this, and it's a little bit complicated. And I agree completely with my colleagues here that we should change the CT or create a new CT designation that disallows STRs. So I think that's a good idea. But just to keep this thing clean, I can tell you my preference would be to deny this upzoning this evening, and then let us change the CT. And if the property owners really want a CT after we've done that change, they could come back and apply for it. What do you think?
I actually think that's a pretty good idea, Mr. Mayor. As a matter of fact, Councilman Gregory was right when he's thinking about some of the folks that are grandfathered. actually Mr. McQueenie when he brought up that there are two issues in CT that can allow people to have longer hours of operation. And creating the second category of CT, I hope we would eliminate that, Mr. McQueenie, as we take away the STR. And I think you'd have a category where this property owner can come up with something that dovetail with the community. The community's not gonna be upset because there's not gonna be any more STRs, not at this location anyway. I think you got a win-win. The problem here, there's nothing in a zoning category that these folks can apply for that doesn't allow a use or many uses that would be upsetting to the neighborhood. And we have the ability just to tweak an existing ordinance. If they can come back, they wouldn't be prohibited from coming, but they don't have to wait a year or anything like that, or 6 months. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. McQueenie. After we tweak that ordinance, if they want to apply for it, I agree they should go through zoning and then come back up to council just like the normal route should be. But it would be settling to the neighborhood, and I think possibly a win-win for all. I say that because I was in the exact same position 24 years ago at 658 Rutledge Avenue, but at that time, nobody even had the topic STR on their mind. Today we do. So yeah, I agree with you, Mr. Mayor. I will withdraw my, if the action step is to give instructions on the other side to staff to go ahead and work on that amended ordinance, I withdraw my motion to defer and look forward to the action step.
Absolutely. How fast can you get back to us, Mr. Morgan, with a proposed change or new CT designation?
We can work on that, Mayor, and send it forward to council for a first read. I know we've got a lot of things pending from a zoning amendment standpoint, and this one is a little bit tricky because of the STRs already in existence in the area, but we can get working on it and get it back to you hopefully in a month or so, I would hope.
Yep. All right.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Seekings and then Gregory.
Can we be heard briefly, please?
No.
Sure, after I speak.
Not at this point, I'm afraid, Mr. Lowe. We're already past the public participation period. Councilmember Seekings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with you 100%. I think procedurally we should do exactly what you have suggested. And Councilmember Waring, I hear you. I think one of the things we need to make sure we do, though, is just look at how many CTs are out there that are also inside both this overlay zone and otherwise qualified for short-term rentals, because we're going to have to notice those properties. So it's going to take some period of time to make sure we clean it up and do it right.
Well, question, Councilman Seeking. If we do what Councilman Gregory said and create a new category,
which may be how we go, or it may be that we just withdraw. Let's just give it some time, because I think either way, we're probably going to have to notice those properties. And I just don't know how many of those are. I don't know that any of us did.
But isn't there, but can't we, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Gregory.
And this is to Chip. I mean, if we were to make an amendment to the existing, can we hold harmless, okay, the existing CTs, which currently have the STR?
Grandfather them in, you mean?
Right, grandfather them in.
So you have to have uniformity within each base zoning district under the state statute. So I don't think you could try. It'd be a lot cleaner to just create a new zoning district if you're going to do it that way. I did want to point out that even if you're commercially zoned, you have to have a residential building to have a short-term rental in these areas. So if you have an existing commercial building in this area, you would literally have to tear it down in a commercial district and build a house and then allow the short-term rental in this area. So it's not any commercial property. It's a commercial property with a residential building on it.
Which is an excellent point, because one of the three applications here has got a piece of property, got a building on it that's a commercial building on it. Right. So you, no matter what we did, you'd have to tear that one down and build it back up. Right. Anyway, just to finish my thoughts, Mr. Mayor, I think we should.
Can I entertain a motion, please? Councilmember Seekings, maybe?
Yeah, motion to deny this application with instructions to staff to bring us back options on CT.
A second.
We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, is that for E3 through E5?
Yes.
This would be for 3, 4, and 5. Correct. Yes, ma'am. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you all for your patience and for your consideration. And there is a path forward. Mr. Lowe, if you'd like, after we form the new CT designation, we'll get right on it, and it shouldn't take more than a month or two. Thank
Can
you.
we have a clarification, Mr. Mayor?
Not at this point, but I'd welcome one with you tomorrow if you want to call my office.
And Mr. Mayor, just one other statement. I just want to thank council and the members of the Neighborhood Association for being willing to talk. Everyone's been very gracious and very cooperative, and we look forward to working to trying to find something that works with the applicant and the neighborhood. But thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Is there any way you would reconsider and just let Mr. Lowe have a minute or two just to go ahead and share his remarks?
Sure. Mr. Lowe, you want to have your 2 minutes that you had given over to Mr. Green. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much. I would very much like Mr. Green to have his 2 minutes to put on our presentation that we had, and then you could vote to deny us.
No.
We've
already voted.
We already voted.
Oh, do I understand that? Do I understand that we are? I don't understand. I'd like the council to kindly explain. I think that you've denied our applications, but the instructions that you're going forward to the planning commission are separate issues.
No.
So that we are denied, and so we have 6 months to refile after the ordinance is changed, if that's what it is you're going to do.
I'm sure Mr. Green would give you great advice, but we have denied your application this evening.
Okay.
And we have asked we've asked our staff to come back to council in the near future, likely to create a new commercial zoning designation that would allow a commercial use friendly to the neighborhood, similar to CT, but that would not allow a short-term rental.
Thank you, Mayor. So for the record, you have denied the 3, 4, and 5's application for LB.
That's correct. And once we form that new designation, though, Mr. Lowe, you would be able to come back and file a new application for that commercial designation and go through the process. If you successful getting that approved, you might put some other appropriate business there, but you would not be able to put a short-term rental.
I understand. So we could then apply again for limited business as well in 6 months.
Well, you could, but
Okay.
it would likely.
I just want the record to be clear. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely, you could. It would likely
be denied.
Same fate, but you certainly would have that legal right.
And I understand the grounds for the denial was the concern.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Point of order. We've already voted on this, and we've already made a decision. And I think we need to move on and let the applicant talk to his lawyer about this, and we can proceed with the next item on our agenda.
Yes, thank you.
We won't let you be heard, but if you'll consult with your attorney, I'm sure you can figure out your next step of action. Thank you so much for being with us. All right, back to Mr. Morgan. We're on number 6 now.
Oh, boy.
Let's see, here we go. All right. All right. Okay, E6. This is back to the St. Phillips Street right-of-way that you just had the removal from the system, the transportation system. It's currently unzoned right-of-way. It would become part of this Shepherd Street PUD here between Shepherd Street and the Septima Clark Parkway. It had previously been owned by SCDOT, and the city would be requesting this because it came to the city, and then it would go to the property owner. The Planning Commission recommended approval 6-0 of this request. And I think you all know where this property is, right there on the northern end of St. Philip Street.
All right, Jennifer, did anyone sign up to be heard on this matter?
No one has signed up to speak on this
Move
item.
for approval.
Second.
Second.
A motion to approve. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Now for third reading and ratification.
Move for approval.
All in favor?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Number 7.
This is a recent annexation in West Ashley. It was zoned R4 in Charleston County. The closest compatible district in the city is SR1, as are other properties in the city zoned in that way in this neighborhood. Planning Commission voted 6-0 in favor of the SR1.
Right. Did anyone want to be heard?
No one has signed up to
Move
speak.
for approval.
Second. All right. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Number 8.
And this is Sandcroft Road, also in West Ashley, a similar R4 annexation from Charleston County to SR1 into the city of Charleston.
No one has signed up to speak.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Number
And
9.
this final is Wapu Road. It's a third of an acre. It was also an R4 property in Charleston County on Wapu Road, and would come into the city as SR1.
No one has signed up to speak.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. That ends our public hearing for this evening. We next have our approval of City Council minutes,
Second.
November 10th. Any deletions, changes, discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. So next is our citizens participation period. Madam Clerk, if you lead us through that, I would appreciate it.
Yes, sir. We have 2 citizens signed up to speak. And would you like to set a time limit?
Let's stick with 2 minutes. We're doing well with that.
All right. The first person is Karen Beard. And Ms. Beard, if you're on the line, if you could press *6. Ms. Beard,
Yes, can you hear me?
we can.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank you, Mayor, for the time to talk during Mayor's Night In last week. Providing that time to speak with you is a valuable way to get input from your residents, and we appreciate it. I'm speaking on behalf of the Charleston Coalition for Wireless Safety Standards, and I would like to address one thing that we discussed last week. You mentioned that objections to small cell antennas regarding health concerns are not allowed by the Telecommunications Act, and sadly, that is true. But there are other reasons within state and federal law for which small cell applications can be declared incomplete. And I would like to list them for you briefly tonight and send the list with more explanation to the council clerk tomorrow. We want to be very sure that every small cell application given a permit meets every requirement that the local government is allowed to put upon them. The first one is, an application can be declared incomplete due to lack of an NEPA evaluation. The applicant can be required to produce written evidence of an NEPA review. Second, an application can be required to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Third, an application can be denied if it fails to show the applicant is licensed for the by the FCC to provide service within the jurisdiction. That comes from our new Wireless Facilities Act, H4262, that the state just passed. Fourth, property devaluation is a valid reason for residential denial. Fifth, a local government can require an applicant show there is significant gap in wireless services for an area that is applied for. Sixth, lack of sufficient fall zone, of course, is a valid reason for denial. And seventh, all applications must contain an FCC compliance form. And of the ones we looked at, 8 of them, as far as we can tell, of the current site applications do not have an FCC compliance form.
We request assurance that these 7 requirements are in place for each site application going forward into the new year. Thank you, Mayor and City Council.
Thank you, Ms. Beard.
Next is Franny Henty. And Ms. Henty, if you're on the line, if you could press *6 to unmute yourself. Ms. Henty.
Yes, thank you so much, Jennifer. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. And listening to your budget meetings, I really saying a prayer for y'all to get all that stuff sorted out. That is a very complicated thing y'all have going on. I do hope that the city doesn't approve the Central Park cluster stormwater plan. I was very baffled at the Planning Commission meeting just last week when they got an extension, and it seemed like in black and white, so many things were like state law was broken, it looked like to me, and many other people. There was about 10 of us who commented. But we also know from our own stormwater scientists how dangerous it is to have this here right now to the surrounding neighbors. It also seems it's contrary for the city to approve it on top of the broken infrastructure, sewer systems and stormwater systems in the middle of a pandemic, and expect to be taken seriously in the lawsuit that they're undertaking with big oil. Thank you so much for your consideration, and have a good night.
Thank you, Ms. Henty.
All right, and those were all of the speakers that we had. We did receive some comments. 17 people submitted comments in support of Charleston Coalition for Wireless Safety Standards. 2 people said first responders should not be furloughed. And 1 person said that establishing a task force to investigate formulas business zoning is a step forward, and that the Avondale residents cannot afford to lose business, which affords employment. And those were all the comments that we received.
Great. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Appreciate it. And no one else came on board the meeting with a notification to be heard. That's it.
Those are the only names that I had.
Great.
I don't know if there was anyone else
Terrific.
on who needed to speak or not, but it was just those 2.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so next we go to petitions and communications. We have approval of appointments for our Church Creek Stormwater Drainage Basin Authority.
Approval.
Second. We got a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you very much. Then we have 3 positions for our Board of Zoning.
Approval.
Move for approval. Second.
Any discussion on those? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, we're going to have a report from Katie McCain, our Director of Sustainability, on our recent advisory committee meeting on resiliency and sustainability. Katie?
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. The Resiliency and Sustainability Advisory Committee met on November 12th. There were 11 of 13 members present. First on the agenda was an update from Mark Wolbert on the U.S. Army Corps of Engineer Peninsula Flood Risk Management Study. Mark mentioned the Wagner and Ball team have been busy meeting with key stakeholders and gathering more input, and they're helping us to evaluate our options as we approach that recently extended agency decision milestone of either supporting the tentatively selected plan or having a locally preferred plan. Next on the agenda, I gave an update about a mattress recycling pilot program, which is being funded through a grant, as you know, we recently received. We have selected our contracted hauler. The hauler's name is BedShred, and we anticipate the recycling program will start on January 1st, 2021. We're excited about that, and we'll have lots more information and program details will be posted on our website. Next on the agenda was our vulnerability assessment final report. Matt Hutchins with NEMAC and Fernleaf presented highlights of the All Hazards Vulnerability Assessment, which is really a city planning tool to help inform on our many local hazards, including who is at risk and what assets and facilities are at risk. That complete report is available on our website. Next on the agenda is the updating of our climate action plan, which is underway this fall and will last through the winter. Myself and Stuart Weinberg shared preliminary feedback from residents who participated in our online community engagement survey and a public meeting and gave their ideas about climate action. Also, the first Climate Action Task Force meeting was held in late September, so I presented a recap of that group's discussion on potential emissions reduction targets. Next, we will convene subcommittee volunteer groups to discuss very specific focus areas when it comes to climate action, such as buildings, waste, and transportation. Many of those will be meeting in the next few weeks. And finally, if there are any other volunteers who would like to participate in the climate action planning process or get involved in any subcommittees, or if there are any other city council members who would like to either get involved themselves or suggest a representative to serve on a subcommittee, please let me know. Happy to entertain any suggestions. And finally, we had a public comment period, but there were no comments at the time. And that is all.
Great. Thank you, Katie. So any questions for Katie? What I wanted to particularly report out, which she did, but I'll highlight that the vulnerability report that we ordered, a year and a half or 2 years ago now, we had a preliminary report to council, but it's the final report now. I think there was an article about it in the newspaper, but Katie, if you don't mind resending the link to everyone, if they are so inclined to take a look at that. It really is an important guiding or planning tool for the future. And I want to make sure that council was aware that that had been finalized. Any questions for Katie? All right, thank you very much, Katie. Now, an update on our city's response to COVID-19. First, I'd like to call on Shannon Scaff, our Emergency Management Director.
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Mayor, members of council, and happy Thanksgiving. Good to see you all. We've got a number of efforts that we're working external to the city with our partners. I'll start with the vaccination plan. There's a lot of discussions out there about vaccinations. Just know that I'm in constant conversations with Jason Patno at the county regarding that. If you want to take a look at the existing plan, as it's written today, it can be found on the South Carolina DHEC website, scdhec.gov. Again, it's a three-phase approach, with the first phase concentrating on healthcare, high-risk populations, and individuals of critical infrastructure. Phase 2 is the more of a general population, and then finally, phase 3 would be management of surplus doses. More to follow on all of that as the plan becomes more solid. I'm working with the board of directors for the Cooper River Bridge Run to sort of nail down what the 2021 event would look like, and if in fact a decision was made on that. I want to stress there hasn't been a decision made, but I am engaged along with Miss Amanda Knight of the town of Mount Pleasant's emergency management. So we're working with them on those details. We're also working with the county and our own Chris Jardin of the city to nail down what our warming shelter efforts would look like this year as the temperatures are starting to drop, and a COVID environment could be a bit of a challenge for us. Chris, as always, has done a fantastic job in terms of nailing down details for screening individuals as they enter the facility. And then finally, just a brief update on where we are with regard to PPE. We're at 90,000 surgical masks right now. We're poised to handle 2 cloth masks for each individual employee of the city to be distributed right after Thanksgiving. Of the 135,000 KN95 masks that were donated, we have 65,000 of those remaining. We've distributed a number of masks to assisted living facilities in the area. And so Mike Tito of Emergency Management continues to do a great job making sure that we have everything that we need to go into the flu season. Penny, your questions, that's all I have for you tonight.
Councilmember Griffin.
Shannon, I sure hope they have the Cooper River Bridge Run this year, because one of my best friends, if he loses his fantasy football league, he's got to run the Cooper River Bridge Run in a suit. So I've got to see that in person. So I sure hope they have it, obviously for more important reasons, but health and safety number one for sure.
Yes, sir.
He may get a little extra time to train. How about that?
He's going to need it because it's going to be hot in that suit, Mike.
All right. So if there are no further questions for Shannon, Tracy McKee is going to round out our report. Tracy?
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, council members. Let me see. Just have a couple of slides to share with y'all tonight. Just a very brief update on where we are. You're probably aware that, let's make sure, there we go. We've now hit over 12 million cumulative COVID cases in the US. And you might remember when I was here 2 weeks ago, that number was 10 million. So the cases have definitely nationwide been on the rise pretty significantly. If you can look at this little red circle on this slide, that's where we were 2 weeks ago when I was here and given this update. So you can see it looked like a pretty big jump in trajectory 2 weeks ago, but now we're over here. So at the end, so you can see it's quite a significant jump. We've hit a new record of more than 196,000 cases in one day. That was on November 20th. And like I said, over 2 million new cases over the past 2 weeks. In the city zip code level, this is just the active cases. So it kind of looks at, kind of a 2 week period of new cases. So you can see we're still on this steady little climb upwards. Not nearly the spike that we saw in the summer, but kind of gently and slowly continuing on an upward trajectory.
Tracy, there you go. We're seeing the slide just now.
Sorry, it's on both of my screens and they're not in sync. So sorry. So yeah, so you can see, not quite the significant trajectory that we had over the summer, but still, we're really kind of on this, nice steady climb up. Obviously, we'd like to see that as flat as possible. But we are still really, compared to everywhere else, we are still looking fairly good at the zip code level here in Charleston. And just kind of looking at 2 week, kind of 7 day periods, we actually saw a 14% decrease in the last 7 days. But if you look at the previous 7 days, it was a 60% increase. So on average, we're still on that upward trajectory, but we do still seem to be on this little up and down roller coaster with our cases. At the zip code level, I mentioned 29401 a couple weeks ago. We can see that the active cases per 1,000 are really kind of going up really across all the zip codes. It's kind of widespread. And kind of the growth rate number that really stands out, at least at this time or last night, was the 29455 zip code. But they all seem to be on a steady trend upwards. Quick update on where we are with city employee cases. We continue to kind of be on the same path as what we're seeing in the community. So we see some cases go up, but then they come back down. As of today, we only have one active case. And we've had a total of 143 cases and 770 employee tests completed, which means the team has had to do contact tracing for each of those 770 people. They've been very, very busy. And I know I showed this the last time, and the Thanksgiving is here, but I just want to kind of reiterate, for folks to, really think about how they plan to spend the Thanksgiving holiday. And if they want to look at some recommendations from DHEC, I've got the link there, because they are seeing clusters of cases as a result of, these small gatherings. So, and I'm happy to take any questions that anyone might have.
Any questions for Ms. Tracy? I'm not seeing any. So thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Shannon. Y'all keep up the good work. Everybody stay safe and think before you think this Thanksgiving. So next, Susan Herdinho will cover our.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I accidentally was off camera for the vote for I and little I too. I just wanted to make sure the clerk knows I was a yay vote for both of those.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For the Board for Zoning Appeals Site Design?
For both Church Creek and also Board of Zoning Appeals. I'm good. Yay for both of those. So.
Oh, great.
Thank
Terrific. Thank you, sir. So next, Susan, if you'd walk us through what orders we need to consider for renewal.
Yes, sir. So we've got two items. One is I-4, the other is I-5. I-4 is continuing the declaration of the local state of emergency to January 15th, 2021. This is in sync with the latest action of the governor, who just yesterday extended the state's state of emergency for some additional time. That's item I-4. Item I-5 is to extend several of our emergency ordinances through, again, to January 15th, 2021. And those ordinances are listed on page 6 of item I-5. And so we would ask for your approval of both I-4 and I-5.
So move.
I second.
All right. Any discussion? All those in
Mayor?
Member Jackson?
I just have one comment. I don't see Mallory Shear from your office on tonight, Ms. Herdina, but I do think that Councilman Appel and the mayor and I have a thank you to her to help clarify how we are interpreting our restrictions on fitness, indoor fitness centers. We had our colleague on James Island, Councilmember Honeycutt, ran into some circumstances that it turns out we were not enforcing our regulations the way that we had intended them initially. So she clarified that and did all the research to make sure that we were in sync with the governor's restrictions. And so I just wanted to give her a shout out for helping us, figure out what we really should and shouldn't be doing.
Thank you, Councilmember. She actually is in the car, might be on the phone and not able to speak. I think she's heading home to Georgia for Thanksgiving, but she's done an amazing job through this whole period in helping us, as well as Sterling on responding to these requests. So thank you. I'm sure
Yes,
she
thank you.
appreciates the recognition.
All right. Now, any other questions or comments? All in favor of I-4 and I-5, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay from Mr. Griffin. Thank you very much. Next is our council communications. First up is a discussion of the interpretation and enforcement of City Charleston Code Section 2-41. Councilmember Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll try to keep this as brief as possible. And I've had several discussions with other council members about the interpretation of this section. This deals with our administration code on council meetings. And it's a very short ordinance. It says no member shall speak a second time on the same question until every member desirous of speaking shall have spoken, and no more than twice without leave of council except to explain. And then this is the other part that I think is a little confusing and probably needs some clarification. Nor shall he, she speak at any time longer than 15 minutes. Now, I've heard different interpretations of that. One is that we're limited to 15 minutes total, and the other is 15 minutes on each subject. So, and we've had some very long council meetings. Last council meeting we had was set a record, and I think Mr. Dean is on the hook for a pizza for us, perhaps, because we did finish in record time. But otherwise, it's just a matter of orderly function of our council meetings to make sure that we're all being heard and our voices have our input on these issues. But the question is, are we limited to 15 minutes per issue or 15 minutes total time and the enforcement of all of that? So that's my question. I don't know if anybody has a response to that, but That's
Now, when
fine.
you say total time, you don't mean for the whole meeting, you just.
Well,
mean-
that's, Mayor, that's sort of what I've heard from different council members, that we had limited to 15 minutes because it says, nor shall he, she speak at any time longer than 15 minutes.
At any time.
Any time.
I've always interpreted it, Councilmember Shade, as being 15 minutes on any item or any topic, which
Right.
admittedly, if we all took 15 minutes on every topic, we could be here for a week or more. But that's the way I've always interpreted it. And if y'all feel like a clarification needs to be made, I would suggest, we renew those council rules at the first meeting of each year. And if y'all want to think about any changes, I would give them some discussion and thought and propose them when we do our annual council rules. Councilmember Del Chapo.
Not to belabor a point, because that's the irony of this whole council communication. But y'all, I mean, everybody's gotten some friendly messages from me about how long our meetings go on for. And I think if you can't say what needs to be said on an issue within 15 minutes, you need to learn how to get to the point faster. I mean, 15 minutes is an eternity to talk about each particular topic. But I do agree that we need clarification in that ordinance. Perhaps we also set ourselves to a stricter time limit, because we get to drone on and on for 15 minutes while the public is limited to 90 seconds or 2 minutes, depending on how many people have signed up. That's a big disparity. So I think that we should tighten the reins on ourselves a little bit and hold ourselves to it. We need to keep these meetings moving along and not hasten through things that perhaps need a little bit more discussion because we're all looking at the clock.
So one solution would just be to shorten the time, I guess, from 15 minutes to some less than now.
Yep.
And if y'all have a preference, again, the time to change that, I think, would be at the first of the year.
Okay.
But you might want to talk about it beforehand. Councilmember Brady.
Just as a point of clarification, would it behoove us, and would you have the authority, Mr. Mayor? I mean, in theory, you could put time limits on topics, like irrespective of the time limit on a council member to speak, but we could entertain 10 minutes of debate on a topic, or 8 minutes, not whatever we determine it is, given kind of the severity of it, because some things obviously we move through quickly and other things deserve a little bit more deliberation. So that might be just something to think about as we look at cleaning up those rules.
Councilmember Gregory.
Yeah, I mean, as long as I've been on council, we've interpreted as 15 minutes per topic. And, I hate to change that or restrict that in any way, although I'm not one of the long-winded ones.
There has been occasion, though, Councilmember.
I just think that we should, leave it where it is. And the only other thing I'm a bit concerned about is some folks have an opportunity to talk 2 or 3 times before we get to another person, and that includes you, Mr. Mayor, because the rules also apply to all council members, of which you are also a member of council, and oftentimes I've observed that you get to say a lot.
I don't say a whole lot at one time. I space it out.
No, Mayor, I'm just throwing that out there. Okay.
Okay.
I think the 15 minutes is fine.
I'm listening.
Yeah.
Well, I must admit, in conducting the meeting, there have been times when I have tried to be more respectful in the last year, if I may say, to let everyone have their turn before someone speaks again. I don't get it perfect all the time, I admit, but I certainly try to respect that if someone hadn't been heard yet.
I think you do, Mayor.
Yeah.
Well, Mayor, I just wanted to bring it up to everyone's attention, and because we were getting kind of long-winded on some of these meetings lasting 3 to 5 hours. When you couple that with the Ways and Means meeting, and then you couple that with some of us being engaged in other committee meetings, it is a 8 to 10 hour council day on occasion. And we're all very collegial and we all respect one another. However, it's just a matter of efficiency to get through the agenda in a manner that's not killing the public. I mean, we got people listening in on these. They want to pay attention to topics that are of importance to them. So I just thought it was worthy of some kind of discussion. So we were moving the agenda along without cutting into someone's opportunity to be heard and raise salient points on particular topics. So maybe it's worth revisiting. Maybe it's just worth leaving as it is. But I just think that's something we all need to be aware of and pay attention to.
Well, thank you. And I think our staff would appreciate it as well, as they have to attend the meetings, our department heads and all like that. So, and maybe the COVID, remote meetings like this have led to us being comfortable at home or whatever. I always stay here at the office, but I did get, to tell you the truth, one of these desks that I can now elevate and stand for a while and sit for a while, because frankly, I found that sitting for so long versus standing at the podium was killing my back. And I don't know how y'all sit all the time when we have the long meetings, but I appreciate that challenge now.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, it's not just happening now. This is not a new phenomenon. We've sat in council chamber, okay, before you got there until 10, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. So this is not a new phenomenon, okay? This isn't something that just happened, okay? Prior to you coming and prior to most of you there, we've sat in that chamber 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night.
Yes, we did.
Does it mean we need to keep sitting there?
No, it doesn't. But if it's important, and most of the time, okay, when we did it, we were dealing with very, very important issues.
Yes,
that's right. Well, that was the other thing I was going to mention, that we have been dealing with a lot of stuff, and some of them required some real decision making and conversation, particularly in this COVID year. So that has certainly led to it. All right. Well, if y'all have any suggestions specifically, why don't y'all get together offline? And as I said, the appropriate time to make a change would be the first meeting in January. So our next council communication is regarding a formula business district and recommendation of Avondale Business District as a pilot. And this was Councilmember Jackson, and I believe she has a special guest star. Councilmember.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is going to be a fun one. So everybody just put on your big smiles. This is going to be an opportunity for us to hear some really good ideas that are, I think, meeting two of our most prevalent goals as a council: to foster and nurture the small and local businesses of City of Charleston, as well as make their customers very happy. So I'm very pleased to be introducing to you Ms. Lauren Gallatley, who is, I think, a month away from being the active executive director of Low Country Local First. You remember we honored her current boss, Jamie Haley, the founder of LLF, a month or so ago. So Lauren has been the program director for Low Country Local First for as long as I've known her. And they continue to be like their own little think tank of finding tools for communities like ours to promote and nurture local business. That's their whole mission. They've done an amazing job of it. So I've invited Lauren to just present for a couple of minutes tonight the concept that we would like you all to agree is worthy of a process that hopefully would end with adding an amendment to our zoning code that would essentially establish Avondale as our first pilot of a formula business district. And Lauren will explain what that is and why we would like to have that tool in our toolbox, as the mayor likes to say. So I'm happy to introduce Lauren, and I think she has an ability to share her screen. So welcome, Lauren.
Thank you, Councilmember Jackson. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Lauren Galatly, and I am currently the Director of Operations for Low Country Local First. We are a local nonprofit that supports and advocates for local independent businesses. I know you've all been on this meeting for quite a long time. Mayor, if I have your permission to share 5 slides, okay, thank you. Let me try to do that. Okay, can anyone give me a hand if you can see my screen now in a presentation? Great, thank you so much. So as Councilmember Jackson said, we wanted to talk with you this evening about a concept that's been implemented in many communities across the country, large and small, and is particularly pertinent right now when we know that our small business community is absolutely bleeding out amidst the pandemic. We recently saw a study from Small Business Majority that said more than 1 in 3 businesses is slated to close within the next 2 to 3 months if they don't get significant help. We all know we're in an emergency situation. So this is a discussion of piloting a formula business district in the Avondale Neighborhood Business District. Pardon me, I'll just figure out how to move my slides down here. All right, so the goal of this is to maintain the unique character that already very much exists in the Avondale Neighborhood Commercial District. It's also about ensuring a very healthy economic diversity and balance, and also making sure we have opportunities for new small businesses to get off the ground. So the why now, I mentioned that already a little bit. We have actually many policies and regulations in place that make life pretty difficult for local and small businesses. So this is something that actually helps to level the playing field, which is more important now than ever amidst the pandemic. We know they're very vulnerable, small businesses, because of the situation with COVID, and this can actually result in land grabs by chain businesses, which is what we're seeing across the country. So a formula business is just another way of saying, in zoning terms, a chain business, and I'll talk to you about the definition of that a little bit more. We're also seeing formula business zoning as a proven longer-term strategy. And it was noted in a recent report called 26 Actions Local Leaders Can Take to Help Small Businesses Weather the Pandemic. And that was published by the Institute of Local Self-Reliance. So here, and I think you all received this in your council materials, this is an illustration. It was created by Low Country Local First. But just to kind of give you a visual representation of what we're really talking about here. At the top, you'll see some of the existing businesses, local independent small businesses in the Avondale area, and then a representation of the types of chain or formula businesses that could potentially be interested in an area like that and in building sizes like that. So formula business zoning, the great thing about it is it's an extremely flexible policy tool. So you can base it on the needs of the communities. It would only apply if this district overlay were to be put in place to new businesses. So it would not affect existing businesses in the area. It can also be, you can pick and choose what business types you might include within the formula business district overlay. So for example, if you want to exclude banks or financial institutions, if you want to exclude a full service grocery store, you can do that based on the needs of the community. A common definition for what qualifies as a formula business, and this is very similar to how the city of Folly Beach, which we worked with them in 2018 to put a formula business ordinance in place. And a common definition is 10 or more establishments anywhere in the world and has standardized features like logo, trademark, uniforms, decor, and merchandise. So if a new business application within the district meets those two categories, it would be considered a formula business. So why Avondale? It's already this wonderful spot of unique independent businesses, and it's really the identity of the district. But we really believe in proactive policymaking and putting something in place to ensure that remains that way rather than being reactive. And we know the change will come. That's what happens. We've seen it on King Street. It became thriving and special with local businesses. And then, you know, the chains come in to build on that success. We also see this as a great area to pilot this idea to potentially apply it to other areas within the city. So these have been in place for a very long time, back to the early 2000s. So this is not a new concept. It's a proven concept. More than 30 communities, large and small. We do have local precedents with the city of Folly Beach that I mentioned in the town of Sullivan's Island. And we are in active discussions with the East Montague Commercial District in Park Circle and with the city of McClellanville. So my next desire is just to answer any questions that council might have. And our hope as Low Country Local First is to just start this discussion. We see this as a starting place. We've spoken to businesses already in the Avondale area and property owners. We know their support. We've seen widespread support from residents in other areas where this has been implemented. So we would just love to start the conversation and move forward with some outreach and potentially working with the process of the West Ashley Revitalization Commission, the Community Development Committee, wherever council determines that this conversation is best taken, and then also determine the scope of what this might look like for a pilot in Avondale. So I'll leave it there and stop sharing so I can see you all and answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren, for that presentation. We'll open a discussion. Councilmember Shealy, Shade, and then Appel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to ask you, Lauren, when you're talking about Avondale, are you talking about both sides of the Avondale area, both sides of the side of it? For example, Avondale Avenue intersects with St. Andrews Boulevard. That's where Mex 1 is. There's a Dairy Queen that's getting ready to open across the street from there. There's several salons, florists, dentists, attorneys, and
on 61, Councilmember,
yeah.
Right. I think the boundaries of this district are to be determined by the community and council and committee. But initially, we were not envisioning this for the 61 corridor at this time.
Okay. I mean, I think there's some unique business. I mean, those businesses consider themselves Avondale, just as the other side of Avondale does. But you know, if it could be considered, I think that would be great. So.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that.
Councilmember Appel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I just want to thank Lauren and Councilmember Jackson, frankly, for putting this item forward. You know, my district is on the other side of 17 from Avondale, and you know, we love this area. I mean, it really is a gem, and it shows the kind of organic, creative development processes that can happen over time. And I'll just mention, because I can't help myself, that all of what you see in Avondale predates zoning. This is the kind of development that you saw when the market was allowed to kind of innovate and come up with intriguing and exciting ways of delivering what the community wanted. This was an area that facilitated and served the original Burns Downs community where I live and I represent. That was a World War II era development that predated zoning. And so I just want to applaud this effort. This is one of many small business geared items that we are working on right now. The other item that we're collaborating with Low Country Local First on right now is this minimum parking requirement issue you may have heard about from me over the meetings, and hope to get an update on that when we get to CD committee. But I just want to stress to everybody that's listening, this is a concept that's in its early stages. We envision substantial community outreach. Lauren mentioned the West Ashley Revitalization Commission. That is certainly somewhere we want to take this. We also want to involve the Ashley River Bridge District, which is a sort of confederation of a lot of the different neighborhood associations in my district and elsewhere. And also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Councilmember Saccharin. I mean, Jason is not just holding it down on the peninsula, if you can believe it. Jason Saccharin has got the other side of Avondale, and if you throw a football just right, you can land on Councilmember Shade's district as well in here. So there's a lot of council members with sort of skin in the game here. Avondale's an extremely good place. And as long as we can keep the Roost to Gamecock bar despite a 2-6 season and firing a coach midway through the season, we'll be in good shape. And I know Councilman Waring and Councilman Shade have got my back on that. So without further ado, and Councilmember Shealy, how can I forget? Of course, let's all keep the faith, guys. These are tough times. But in all seriousness, great work and a great beginning of this exciting conversation. I look forward to being a participant in the coming days.
Great. Councilmember Shade and then Saccharin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And it may sound a little bit of a replay of what Councilmember Appel has just mentioned, but the Avondale area is a very unique geographical area. A good portion of it is not within the city limits, is not part of the incorporation of the city. But it does include parts of my district, parts of Councilmember Waring, parts of Councilmember Appel, and Saccharin. So it is diverse in many ways. And I mentioned to Councilmember Appel and Jackson that I think really the discussion on this should fit squarely within the West Ashley Revitalization Commission, because the Plan West Ashley study would address some of the issues and concerns that they have on there. You've got Councilmember Waring and Councilmember Brady and I on that committee, on that commission, along with, of course, with the mayor and other citizens who would have a vested interest, and we would touch on the stakeholders to discuss this. This is worthy of merit to discuss all of these issues that Lauren and Councilmember Jackson have brought up. So I would just go ahead and suggest that we send this to put it on our next agenda for the January West Ashley Revitalization Commission meeting.
Great. Councilmember Saccharin and then Seekings.
Thank you, Mayor. And Marie, you can get your clock out, your stopwatch out. I've got 30 seconds here. I'll get it done in 30 seconds. Go. Lauren, just thank you. I would be remiss if I didn't say thanks for everything y'all have done through COVID with all the resources y'all have been pumping out around SBA disaster. I think it's been tremendously helpful, along with obviously Meg in our city office. So thank you for all that. And then the last two things are, this is really not, I just want to make sure that folks are aware, it's not an anti-business approach. This is really the goal of this is to protect and preserve kind of like the local unique flavor. And Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong, these are flexible and they can change and you can meld them to different areas. So, if this pilot does work, I would love to be able to see this potentially in other areas, and it might not look the same as Avondale's. And I think you've got some interest from local business owners, which is great. I just wanted to make sure that, I'm on record as supporting it. And I think it's a wonderful first step. And to Councilman Shade's point, running this through revitalization is a great step. So thank you.
Councilmember Seekings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, long before Avondale was carved up into 3 districts, it was in my district. And it's a really great place. And one of the reasons it's such a great place is because before we got really sophisticated and thought about what was happening over there, we had some local business people who really were focused on local. And that's Michael Rabin and Ed Kronsberg. So whatever happens over there, I just want to make sure, no matter what committee or commission this goes through, that we keep them very closely aligned on what's happening, because they are really the founders of what is now a very successful Avondale. They're visionaries. And I think that keeping them close, keeping their ideas out there, and because they either own or represent the owners of the biggest plots and sections of land out there, is very important. And I have no idea whether you all have been consulting with them along the way, but particularly Ed, who's very hands-on and active. I would certainly want to make sure that he's involved in every step of the way before it comes to council. We sort of get his blessing on all of us.
Well, in fact, one of our public comments in writing was from Mr. Kronsberg. So if y'all hadn't read his comment, please go back and read that. Councilmember Jackson.
Well, I was just going to say the same thing. Mr. Kronsberg was actually the first person outside of our little talking group with Lauren and Councilmember Appel and Councilmember Safran that we went to. And it was serendipity. I ran into him at the open house for the Grace Homes. So I was able to just speak with him in person about this. And he said, sign me up. You know, I had a 2-minute or 30-second little explanation. So I think we really do have the support of people like you say, who have been the prime movers and shakers of the way that Avondale has stayed the same, but become just even more popular over the years. And then I just wanted to correct the record with Councilmember Shealy. I would love to see 61 included in this, but it's not a Dairy Queen across from X1. It's going to be the home of Turbo Cone, which will be a one and only soft serve ice cream spot that has been snake bit to open during COVID, but it's coming. So Turbo Cone would fit the formula for exactly what Low Country Local First is trying to do here. Thanks.
Great. And so
one other person I forgot to mention, Mayor, Skipper Condon. He's another one who really should be involved in what goes on over there too. He's been there forever. Thanks.
So Lauren, if I may, kind of a comment and kind of a question too, and I think I know the answer, but and maybe is it more appropriate that it would be called the non-formula business district, because kind of you're excluding the formula businesses, right?
Good point, Mayor. Yes, or formula business zoning.
Yeah. So, but I do have a question. I know each district maybe can have its own characteristics. But I would be cautious about being able to keep some flexibility. For example, I mean, there are franchise operators who are local citizens who operate a franchise business. They might have some trademark, you know, that's a national brand, but they're running the business. It's their skin in the game, and I'd hate to be so restrictive that we you know, keep local entrepreneurs who choose to pursue a franchise business. And where do you draw the line on trademark? I mean, an example, Councilmember Shealy, might be you. I mean, you're an independent agent, but you're State Farm, right? So that's a national brand. And I know you're probably an independent operator and all like that. But if you get too formula driven, then maybe you wouldn't be able to allow an independent local State Farm agent from having an office there. So I just think we have to be careful about
all state. Thanks.
What's that?
I said it's actually all state.
All state. All state. Sorry. Oh, you're in good hands with Councilmember Shealy. All right, there you go.
I think that's very good point that you made, Mayor.
So we look forward to continuing the discussion as you go to the WARC and work with our planning department, and hopefully also address the issue of including the county, since this is a donut hole area where both city and county are. It'd be kind of interesting to see how they would feel about partnering with us, even on a small district like this. Great.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you. Councilmember Waring.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of
second the point you brought, because even Avondale, there was time when they used to have a little Subway sandwich shop over there, and who could forget the Krispy Kreme? I mean, those were franchises, and a little bit down, a block or two down the way, if you look at St. Andrews Shopping Center, many of us remember when that shopping center was dead. Well, Harris Teeter came in over there, and all of a sudden you can't hardly find a parking space. So there's a happy medium there to be arrived at. So thank you.
That's right. All right. So thank you again, Lauren, for bringing that to us, and Councilmember Jackson. We will continue this conversation. Next up is our committee reports. First up, Councilmember Mitchell, Community Development. Yes,
Community Development Committee met on November 12th at 4:30, and we had a couple of items we had 2 items under the old business, which is the first one was voted and approved. The first bit, which was A1, was approved, and that was approved by abandoned building. Chip McQueenie explained to us, and that one was approved. Under I2, number 1, I2, ordinance supporting minimum parking requirements. We got a briefing from our own council member talking about that one particular one, but it's an overview by Appel. He gave us an overview on the parking requirements, the talking with the parking. And so what we did with that, we just deferred that one. They'll be coming back to the city committee with additional information. And under new business, we had 2 items under the new business. One was the assistance with COVID-19. That was approved also, and that money was to assist families that was had problems during the COVID-19, and to assist homeless individuals who were facing evictions and stuff like that. So that also was approved. And the last item was the urban growth boundary, and that was received for information only, but we also requested that the staff and our attorney would get with the Johns Island task force and other entities involved and get additional information, and they will be bringing that back to the city committee, and then we'll take a look at during that time. So I'm asking approval for the committee report.
All right. We have approval of the committee report, which included 2 specific items for approval, A little I and B little I, which we approved at Ways and Means tonight already.
Move for approval, Mayor.
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Appel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Chairman Mitchell, for that overview. And yes, we had a very in-depth, lively discussion about my proposal to eliminate minimum parking requirements along certain areas along King Street in our commercial corridor. And staff did a very good job of throwing out a proposal that would essentially link the parking exception to the vicinity of parking garages and other parking infrastructure, whether public or private. And I think that does a very good job of mitigating some of the potential concerns from surrounding neighborhoods. But let's be very clear here, staff has done a very exhaustive analysis of the region, cities similar to ours. And the vast majority of cities have gotten rid of these requirements a long time ago. The city of Columbia, for crying out loud, eliminated these requirements 50 years ago. We are 50 years behind the city of Columbia on this issue. City of North Charleston, just up the road, has made progress on this issue. We just got finished with a discussion about small businesses. And the formula business approach is certainly a valid way of addressing this issue. But right now, there are structural inequities in our system that make it expensive and difficult for small businesses to open. Right now, if you want to fill one of these vacancies on King Street and you're a small business, you got to come up with the parking, and that can cost big bucks. Yeti doesn't have a problem with big bucks. Williams-Sonoma doesn't have a problem with that. But small mom and pops, small businesses, small restaurants, this is the best way we can bring the quickest relief to our struggling commercial corridors to help them open. And while I appreciate, the comments about bringing it back to CD committee, we've been there twice. I think we need to have staff continue with the work on preparing a proposed ordinance and run this through the normal procedure for zoning ordinances. I mean, this would be a change to our zoning ordinance, and as required by state law, it has to go through the Planning Commission. Now, certainly, we can keep the CD committee updated along the way, but I really want to avoid y'all just getting bogged down in committee and months go into months and we still don't move forward on this. This is something that we can do in the short term to help small businesses and help remove some of those barriers, very expensive barriers to small businesses. And guys, this is real low hanging fruit. Some of the other stuff we've been talking about is frankly kind of exotic and innovative and really will take some study and some analysis. This is simple stuff. And City of Charleston, frankly, is behind the times on this in a big way. And it is currently choking off small businesses, and not just small businesses, but housing. Second and third floors along King Street. It is too expensive for these things to be turned over. And we've got to get this thing moving through the process. Staff's working hard on it. Let's get it to Planning Commission. Let's keep CD committee updated along the way. But guys, we got to act on this. Our community is struggling right now.
All right, Councilmember Sackman.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to add to Councilman Appel's urgency with this, I do agree. Just like the formula business plan, what we reviewed was a targeted kind of approach and a pilot for this. So I think there's room for adjustments that can be made in building that flexibility in. But I would strongly encourage and hope that fellow council members will try to push this through. If we have bringing it back to CD committee after that, to me is not the best use of the staff time. They've done their work. I think it's incumbent upon us to take the next step.
Thank you. Councilmember Gregory.
Yeah, I understand, that we want to get this done as soon as possible, but I don't want us to start circumventing our procedures. I do think that it would be worthy to get a recommendation from the CD committee to the committee of a whole. I just don't think skipping steps is the way to go in this regard, because then we'll be starting a precedent and we'll be back where we've been before. Everything skipping standing committees and going directly to the committee of a whole. So I think that it should come back to the CD committee so that we can have a good look at the proposed ordinance, make any recommended changes accordingly, and then recommend it to the committee of the whole. But I don't think we should start skipping the standing committees again. Been there, done that. And I don't want to set the precedent.
Councilmember Shade and then Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to lend my support to this momentum that Councilmember Appel has generated. And I hear Councilmember Gregory's warning on this. What was interesting about the discussion that I participated in on this issue was that two points that came up. Number one, there was never any rhyme or reason why they had this restriction on number of cars and parking for these businesses. It was just done in a way to kind of control traffic and try to control parking availability. The second point of all this is that when you go up and down King Street, and you know the history of Charleston, it was a walking city. So these buildings were not constructed to accommodate the parking requirements. And so it's like taking a square peg in a round hole mentality, and it created, and we've used this term a lot on council meetings, unintended consequences. And that's exactly what happened with this. So removing these restrictions as expeditiously as possible is going to have a huge impact on addressing the needs of King Street and our corridor. And as Councilmember Appel brought up, it's not just commercial, it's also going to have a positive and huge impact on residential component as well. So I don't want to skip steps, Councilmember Gregory, I agree with you on that, but I do want to make sure that this thing gets on a fast track, and we need to grease the rails on this so that we have the benefit of this coming down the pike as soon as possible. Thanks.
Councilmember Mitchell. And
yes,
then
I hear what everybody is saying, and coming back, we fought hard to make sure that things take the right protocol coming through the various committees that it should come through. One time we didn't have that, and we ran into a bunch of problems. I think a lot of the council members here tonight that right now was not here when we went through these changes. And things were skipping, and we came back to us, and we had to go back through it all over again. And my thing is, I mentioned even with the parking, I don't have a problem with the changes that's being taken place, but I always say we got to remember the community. Once businesses fail, whatever happens, communities still have to be here to take over until such time as things change. We got to also remember when all this was happening, like the King Street wars, with businesses along King Street, times have changed, so the businesses have left what was there on King Street from Cannon Street all the way up, which I used to go to, like Shade's Shade Store and Morris Sokol and all these places. They're gone. They're gone. And the traffic was not the way it is now. So that's why during that time, parking was fine. But now it's different. Cars are all over the place. We have so many people that move in here and build businesses here. We didn't have an entertainment district at one time. So it has changed, but we got to make sure that we do not overrun the community with anything at all. I'm very, very adamant about communities, very much, because community have to be viable in case anything should ever happen. The community is the one going to still be here, but the people paying their taxes and whatever the case may be to keep the city operating, always. So with the parking problems, I know it's bad. Look at what's happening on Lee Street, America Street. People there can't even park in their own places. They can't even park where they live right now. When you're having 200 cars that's on in that area at one time, you didn't have any at all. So now we have problems with that. So we just got to be very careful and make sure it's going to be done right and properly. I know we need to upgrade King Street to make sure King Street is viable again, so people can have these places and get rid of parking. But Greenville, Columbia, they have a certain area. You look at it, it's totally different from the way we have on King Street. In the middle of it, they can do the parking, not parallel parking, but pulling parking. It's totally different. So we have to look at all these things in concern, even with the parking garage, but they have parking garage enough around there. If the people would use it and we can get them to those parking garages, I think it'll work. It'll work out fine.
All right. Well, Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Listen, I understand Councilman Appel, wanting to fast track this, and I agree with wanting to fast track this. But circumventing the committee process, we can do that dual approach. We discussed this in the community development meeting. You all, that process, skipping committees, creates dissension on council. It's done that in the past. And if we go back to that, I think it'll do it in the future. The mayor's done a good job curtailing that and running it through committees. As a matter of fact, the whole aspect of having the infrastructure in place and curtailing it to areas where parking garages, public or private, came out of the discussion in the community development meeting. That didn't come from staff. The presentation showed it, and then through conversations, we, I think, evolved to the point to where the infrastructure is in place, this can be utilized versus going beyond areas that would be allowed without that infrastructure being in place. The staff has to prepare the information to go forward to city council, to the planning commission. All they got to do is send a copy of that to community development. Yep. And we discuss it simultaneously. So I don't think it'll slow it up. If you would allow, we can have that dual track.
Parallel track.
Correct. All right.
All right. So what's on the floor is approve the committee report, which really just approves A little I and B little I. We'll be coming back with specific ordinance write-ups on the parking requirements and further action on the urban growth boundary at a later time.
Correct.
All in favor? Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right. Next up is Councilmember Shade, Committee on Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Madam Clerk. The Public Safety Committee met yesterday. We received a presentation from Tracy McKee as to the proposed open data policy. The purpose of this policy is multifaceted. Y'all should have gotten a copy of that. One is to provide transparency to our public as to city records, public records is what they are, and make those records more accessible and available to the public in a more efficient manner. However, there's a lot of discussion that needs to be contained in that. She's met with department heads, and we need to fine tune some of this, particularly sensitive materials regarding public records, particularly police investigation reports and things of that nature. So we just received that for information purposes only. We'll get more update from Tracy as this thing gets more fine tuned. We went into executive session to get an update on fire stations number 11 and 14. Number 11, of course, is the fire station next to the Sofa Superstore. We just agreed, no action was taken on that report. We've agreed for a update on that at our before our December 14th committee meeting. If we need to have further discussion about where we stand with that, we may need to go into executive session. We can do that at the end of this council meeting.
Well, I would say, I think your committee was expecting another report back in a couple of weeks after staff follows up on a few items we've discussed. So let's wait until we get that next report from staff and see how those things work out, if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. And we decided to just get an update with some specific news as to where they stand with the construction at our December 14th meeting.
Great, terrific. So that was just for information. We appreciate your report. Any other questions for Councilmember Shade on those items? All right, next up is our Committee on Public Works, Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The two acceptance and dedications, A1 and 2, passed unanimously, and I so move before council.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Under item B, all items B1 through 6, I'm sorry, through 8, through 7, I'm sorry, passed unanimously. And I'll move this passage, and then I'd like Mr. Fountain to touch bases on what Councilman Seeking and I alluded to doing Ways and Means about the technology on those arches and utilizing the stormwater drainage underneath the city.
Second motion, Mr. Mayor.
Matt Fountain, are you with us? I know he's on
Yes.
vacation, but
I'm here,
will
Mr. Mayor. Thank
join
you.
us tonight.
Oh,
no, I'm here. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Councilman Waring. So
you go on vacation wearing flip-flops right now, and I think
bare feet, actually, Councilman Shea. The brick arch system is a very interesting, unique part of the kind of the Charleston peninsula and now drainage. Once sewer. It was installed in the series of archways installed in the 1850s during the yellow fever epidemic. There's actually about 10 miles of brick arches underneath the downtown streets. They're generally 5 feet tall and 3 feet wide, which is kind of the minimum size considered to be hand cleanable at the time by the workers. Basically, we've obviously as a city we've separated our sewer system out from our stormwater system with Charleston Water Systems. These arches, as a result, fell into pretty severe disrepair, and typically they come to council as emergency repair items when streets collapse or sinkholes open up, and we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to stabilize the street and repair the arch and basically prevent anything from being a safety hazard. What Mr. Newham's kind of worked on these repairs over the last decade or so for the city, and he's really realized that the arches are generally in pretty outstanding condition. The brickwork tends to be in great condition. It's the mortar that tends to fail. And then any damage from utility penetrations over the last 150 years kind of cause, as anyone's familiar with engineering, if you have an arch is incredibly strong until you move one piece out of the arch and then it collapses. So that's where we have a lot of our collapse issues. What we've looked at though is instead of these being just a liability, since they're in such generally good condition, they're actually a kind of an invaluable asset to the city. And that this is basically 10 miles of box culvert that exists under the city that is currently not really used for anything. It's mostly silted in or have other issues that prevent water flow. So we've basically been working to, instead of kind of trying to just patch the repair area, to actually rehabilitate the arch to move drainage through it again. And these items, these 5, what we typically call like an indefinite delivery contract or a task order contract, are basically where we've set unit prices for competitive bid for work on the arches. And then we're going to go through with basically staff working as an engineering team and these on-call contractors working almost as a design build style contract to be able to do a pilot project to rehabilitate specifically the Limehouse brick arch, which is a project that was funded out of the 2012 stormwater bond with the drainage fund. So we have about $1.8 million set aside through that funding allocation to restore this arch, see the improvements we can get, basically create that template, and then try to leverage with SCDOT and Charleston Water Systems, who are kind of our 2 major partner entities where the arches lie, to look at opportunities to fund and rehabilitate the remainder of the arches, which would allow us to greatly, dramatically improve drainage in about a third of the peninsula with these 10 miles of drainage structure. So it's a really neat opportunity. Again, converting something we're currently spending a lot of money on as a liability into something that we can instead turn into an asset. So appreciate the time to talk about it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Fountain, for that explanation, and appreciate you going above and beyond and being on this meeting for that. Mr. Mayor, I move forward with the question I put forward. Move for approval on all items considered.
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, sir. Next up, Committee on Ways and Means, Councilmember Gregory.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I recommend approval as amended.
Second. All right. Any discussion? All in favor, please say
I'd
aye.
like the record to reflect the vote from the lost with 8-5, and I voted no.
Absolutely.
We'll carry that over to council.
Yeah, it
Thank
does
you.
carry over.
And Madam Clerk, if comments as to the reasons for that vote can also be included in city council minutes, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Can.
Thank you.
Terrific. All right. So we're not changing what happened. We're just affirming what happened, I guess you'd say. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. So bills up for second reading. We have 6 items.
Move for approval of 1 through 6, if we could take them together, please.
Second.
Does anybody want to break any of them out for any reason? We'll take them together. Any discussion on 1 through 6? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now for third reading and
So
ratification.
moved.
Second.
1 through 6. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We have no bills up for first reading. Our next regular meeting is going to be next Tuesday. We're going to take a couple of days off for Thanksgiving and come right back and have council meeting again next Tuesday. And we will continue our deliberations on the budget. I wish everyone a blessed Thanksgiving. Have a little time off with your families and enjoy the long weekend. See y'all next week. Happy Thanksgiving.
Mayor, happy
Thank you.
Everybody have a good Thanksgiving.